also, as I think about kind of what's different with adolescents, we know that they're not just small adults. Um, we know that they're not just, uh, fresher adults who have more energy. Their brains are building. I mean, it's easy for us to recognize that in the 2-year-old or the 5-year-old. But the adolescent who might be taller than us still has a brain that's developing. And we know that because of that, there tends to be a limitation or kind of they're not fully developed in terms of being able to have insight about what's going on, particularly about seeing consequences in the future. So the sleep example, because it comes up so much, there's not, they're not having the same perspective as hopefully we get as adults, that if I don't sleep consistently for a week or 2 weeks, this really is going to build up and become a problem. They also are not necessarily able to anticipate that having this stress, this tension, is going to take a toll. I was speaking to someone the other day who said, well, I don't want to, I mean, it was basically like, I'm so stressed, but the alternative is doing nothing, just laying there and doing nothing. And neither one of those are going to work, but her perspective was that, like, this is my best bet. I gotta just stay kind of in a panic, because if not, nothing's gonna work. And the cost of that may not be as clear to them. There's also classically what we think of as the adolescent myth, that sense that I'm me and I'm unique. Well, that's absolutely true. No one has lived this life before, and therefore other experiences, other people's experiences aren't particularly relevant. And so that also, creates a situation where adolescents are not, it's a barrier, that they're able to navigate to various extent, but it's a barrier to getting extra information, extra perspective, because none of us know everything. When people are in crisis, I often think of it as like, if you're in a swimming pool and you're really struggling, what you need is someone who's outside the pool. You need someone who can see it from a different perspective and maybe who has other resources. So if, for an adolescent who doesn't feel that other people's, references are relevant, that can be isolating. It also tends to feed into a lot of the fear that the struggles that they're having, the anxiety, is not normal, that they're having this feeling because there's something wrong with them. And this is particularly an issue, I think, when it comes to stressors, because as I mentioned, dealing with something that is stressful is a normal part of the human experience. What we're trying to address is more how we react to the stressor. But I've also seen the kind of the problem that can come from adolescents and certainly adults, feeling like if there is something that's pushing me to respond, there's a problem. Like, what I should feel is nothing. So it's kind of the other end of it. It's like, either I have to be in this heightened state to function, or if I don't feel completely, at ease, then something's wrong. I need to get to a point where I feel nothing. And therefore, often the solution is, whatever's making me feel this way, I don't want to do it. And the school example is really fresh in my mind, because I've spoken to a few adolescents recently who are just really struggling with going to the school building. And I think especially with COVID, a lot of these kids have varied schedules. And so being able to confront the stressor and figure out what to do about it, I think is even further complicated by not having a routine. And so it's today, Wednesday, I have to go to school. I hadn't gone to school since, Friday of last week. So, now this thing is coming, doesn't feel right. Therefore, my best bet is to just not do it, which of course creates more stress because it doesn't put them at ease. It just makes things more complicated. Another thing I wanted to point out, and I think it also has to do with perspective that adolescents have, is that, of course, they're trying to learn and find explanations for what's going on. And with the internet, information is so readily available, which is great. But there's information of all different kind of quality and reliability and accuracy. And I find that, so there's this whole mixture of I want to be normal and, you know, there's the want to be normal, but then there's also very much the fear that I'm abnormal. And with the internet, I'm abnormal can go from, I was just feeling really overwhelmed, so I just kind of spaced out, to I dissociate. And, it says that dissociation could mean that I have schizophrenia. And if you don't have a lot of life experience to look at, then that seems like a completely viable possibility. Or I was so moody, I'm definitely bipolar. I just know it. Which unfortunately, like when these all become pathology, oh my gosh, that would freak me out too if I thought that that was probably the case. I came home and my mom was so getting on my nerves and I must be bipolar. So, what was a problem becomes like there's something wrong that has to be fixed. Maybe it'll never be fixed. So when I look at how anxiety might manifest in adolescents in a way that's perhaps a little different from adults, I would say that the irritability often is the hallmark because, because that's what happens when your brain is overwhelmed and when you don't know what to do. The ability to regulate emotion is diminished. And so keeping that in mind has been helpful to me because, I don't want help, leave me alone. It helps me see that as, okay, this is worry, this is fear. It's not, aggression. It's not meant to hurt other people. It's really more of a self-protective thing. But it then becomes a source of isolation too. Leave me alone. If we translate it into I'm really afraid or I don't know what to do, that might, lead an adult to respond one way. But if we take it as leave me alone, get out of my face, I can't stand you, then, oh, okay, well, I've got to give them space. Some space is good, but letting them kind of swirl around in what's in their head, you know, leaves them vulnerable to all those thoughts and all of that. I don't know. Am I normal? Should I have done this? Should I not have? And as we know that anxiety can come from a lot of different sources, I also find that probably the most common source of anxiety for anyone is the fear of what other people think about me. And so when you've dealt with that fear over years and hopefully found some ways to kind of calm that down and say, okay, I don't really know what people think. Maybe I can just take a step back. Well, for an adolescent who's not sure what they think of themselves, because that's an ongoing, like, who am I and am I okay? And should I be this way? When they encounter the fear of, do other people like me? Am I good? I guess what I would say is they're so much more vulnerable to that than perhaps an adult, because a lot is still being shaped in their sense of who they are.